Hello guys, welcome once again. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use for loop and for each loop in C sharp. So as I have already taught you in the last two videos that a loop is a piece of code by which you can iterate or perform some statement in a loop again and again. So for loop is also just for the same purpose. So let's see how we can use first of all for loop in C++. Let's see the basic uh, format of for loop. So for loop is declared like this. You start with a keyword called for, and then you initialize these brackets, and inside these brackets you pass three arguments. First is the initialization value, and then it will be separated by the semicolon. Second argument is the condition which you want to met, and the third argument is the increment or decrement whatever you want to do in the loop, and inside these curly braces you perform your statement. So let's do the same in our code. For example, I will declare a for loop for, and in these brackets I will just declare my condition. So I will say int a is equal to 0 semicolon, a is less than 10 semicolon, and a plus plus. Okay, so this is my initialization. I'm initializing an integer variable with 0, so this is called initialization. And the second argument is the condition. So I'm checking whether my value of a is less than 10, and then third argument is the increment. So I'm increasing the value of a by 1. Let's add these two semicolons, and in here I want to print the value of a if it's less than 10. Okay, so I will just print the value of a. I will just write console dot write line, and in the bracket I will just say value of a is in this placeholder. I will pass the value of a. Okay, so let's try and run this program. And what this program did is it just printed the value of a from 0 to 9, which are 10 values, right? And what happened here, our code will start from here, and it will initialize a with 0, and it will check the condition whether a is less than 0 less than 10 or not, and then it will go here and it will print value of a is equal to 0, and once again it will increase the value of a by 1. Now value of a is 1, and which is less than 10, it will print value of a 1, increase the value of a plus 1, which is a is equal to 2. Once again it will check the condition which is less than 10, it will print it, and it will keep on looping until and unless your condition is met, which is a is less than 10. As soon as a become 10, this condition will not be true, and it will, our program will go out of the loop, right? So in this way you can use for loop. Now how to use for each loop? This is also a loop which we can use to iterate values. So let's see how we can use for each loop. So first of all, let's see what is the basic format of for each loop. So for each loop is declared like this. It has an initial statement which is a keyword for each, and in this bracket you have this collection, and you will iterate this collection as a value one by one. So this value will iterate through this collection, sorry, and then this value can be used inside this loop to print it or to perform some code or algorithm inside this for loop. So let's see how we can use it in our code. I will delete this program for now, and now let's see for each. For this example, I will take the collection, or I will take an array of names. So I will declare it like this. I will declare a string array with a variable name array, and I will initialize this string by value 5, so it can hold 5 values, right? And I will just initialize this array with some names. So name 0 is this name, name 1 is this, and until name 4, which is a fifth value, and I will assign this. And for example, I want to print all these values using for each loop. How can I do this? So what I can do is I will use for each loop for each, and I will give this brackets, and in here I can declare my variable which will hold each name. So I will declare this as a name itself. This can be anything, this name can be anything, but in is constant. You need to use in between your holder or placeholder and your collection, which is array, right? So this is our collection. So this array will contain the collection of values like this, okay? And this variable will access this collection one by one. So I will just declare this curly braces, and then what I will do is I will iterate through this array. But first of all, I need to give a type to this name variable. Because we have this array as a string, we need to initialize this name as a string also. String. Okay. So this name will contain one name at a time from this array. Now we want to print this. So I can say console dot write line, and inside this bracket I can say hello plus whatever name, which is this one. So what this code will do is it will iterate through this array one by one. So first of all, let's try and run the program and let's see what it does. So what this code does is it will iterate iterate one by one from array. So first it will say hello first name, which is Steven, and then it will say hello second name, which is Clark, and like that all the name it will iterate. So what it's doing is it will go here and it will see what is the first value in the array, and it will pass this value in this variable, and then it will print this value here, hello Steven, and once again it will go here and it will go to the second value, which is Clark. It will go to this code and it will print it hello Clark, and once again it will keep on looping until and unless our last value is printed. So what is the basic difference between for loop and for each loop? In for loop you need to define the index, right? So for example, we see these two conditions here. You need to define initial value, the condition which is which will iterate through your index until this condition will met, and you need to increment. Okay, so let's see in this code here. I will once again write that for loop for you which we have just used, and in here we need to know the index, right? So we need to iterate through 10 values, for example. Now, for example, you want to iterate through this string using this for loop. How can you do it? What you can do is you can use this array. So just take this variable array and you can just print this array like this. In the square brackets, you just pass this a, which is a integer which is starting from 0, and unless 10 comes, it will keep on increasing. So it will go through array 0, array 1, array 2, array 3, array 4. But as soon as it goes to array 5, which is not declared, or which is not the size of this array, which is greater than the size of this array, it will give you an exception. So now, for example, I will run the program, and as soon as I print this, it must give the exception like this. You see here, it's showing troubleshooting tips. Make sure that the maximum index of the list is less than the size, right? So whenever you are using for loop, you need to think about the index of the collection you are using. If you are using this string array which have the index of 5, you cannot go and loop through this array and give 10 as an index, right? If you use here 5, it will work fine. I'll run the program and you see it's working, and we are waiting, and no exception occurs, right? So whenever you use this for loop, you need to know the index correctly, and whenever you use this for each loop, you don't need to know the index of this array. You can just iterate through the collection or this array one by one until and unless the end of the array reaches. So for example, I will increase this array by 1. Okay, and this can be some more name, and I will change the index by 1, right? 6, and this will be 5. So here you don't need to change anything in this for loop, even if you increase the index or decrease the index. But here you need to change this value of loop, which is the maximum value your loop will expect, or your loop will iterate. So like this, and I will run the program and it will work fine. Okay, so just whenever you want to iterate through a collection or an array or an hash values, you need for each loop. Okay, and whenever you need to use index and you know the index and you want to iterate on the basis of your index, you use for loop. So I hope you understood this basic concept of for and for each loop, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please rate, comment and subscribe, and bye for now.